we give things.
Oh, yeah.
We get things.
And see all the smiling faces.
It snows.
Oh, yeah.
And
we have hot chocolate.
And we get to do these Christmas greetings on the radio.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
And thank you for listening and for helping out with all of our things that we do.
God bless.
All year long.
All right, 23 minutes before 11 o'clock. Gosh, it's just flying by, isn't it? Christina Julian is on the phone. Christina is a wine and food colonist in Napa Valley. Oh my gosh, I hope she did all right during those fires earlier in the year. She's a contributor to the San Francisco Chronicle. She's a wine enthusiast. She does Weddings California, is that right? What does wedding? And she's a novelist. Her book is called The Dating Bender, because everyone deserves a do-over. Christina Julian, good morning. How are you?
Hi, Larry. How are you this morning? I'm great.
And are you in San Francisco right now?
No, I'm actually in Napa Valley, gazing at the grapes.
How did you do during those fires?
Well, we were really fortunate. We lived about about a mile from where the fires were, so we had a mandatory evacuation, and it was very touch and go for a day. We, were out of the area and just kind of hoping for the best and bracing for the worst.
Wow. Yeah, I have a friend who lives out there, and I had communicated with her by Facebook, and they had to evacuate too, her and her husband.
Yeah. It's just a very odd feeling, because there's a panic period where you're trying to get every possible thing, and then you realize you really can't get anything, and you have to just grab and go and leave, and then you're like, okay, at least we're happy. That's what you're going to focus on. And but we feel very grateful that our house was spared, and many people were not as lucky.
So tell me about Samantha Serrano. Who is Samantha Serrano?
Samantha Serrano is a girl, a woman who is just desperately trying to kind of figure out life and succeed in love, and she is just kind of failing with aplomb along the way. I like to say she's a woman who's she's unhinged and at a crossroad, and she tries to kind of marry herself out of a very oppressive family, and that of course backfires big time. and she just kind of foibles her way trying to kind of figure it out, and she's I think she's a woman that we all can relate to a little bit at a certain point in our life. And then she's a woman that we're like, why are you doing the crazy things that you're doing? And she keeps doing them anyway.
Yeah. If you marry yourself out of an oppressive family, and then it doesn't work out, it's almost like it's easier to divorce yourself from your family. Divorce being in quotes, of course. But once you're locked in with those marriage vows, if it's not working out, oh my gosh, you're really locked in, aren't you?
Right. And she was part of the, and the book is The Dating Bender. It's a romantic comedy. So there's a lot of comedy in there, but some dark undertones. And she was raised Catholic, and so I think that just kind of fuels the fire further, because in the Catholic Church, divorce is not an answer.
Right.
Just a sentiment that haunts her, throughout her journey, and she, kind of globetrots all over the place, from Florida and to New York City, and then there's kind of an epic showdown at the foot of the Vatican in Rome, where she, again, she's trying to sort of figure it out.
I found the book on Amazon, and you're getting really good reviews. And the one thing I think I expected to see is on here, and it is the comment that people can relate to Samantha. I think you've created a character that does seem like somebody you either know or somebody you are, and does. I guess the standard question then would be, is this you?
No, and yes, that is a standard question that I hear all the time. People are like, "Is that you?" And no, it's not me. It is, I was raised in a Catholic family, and there was a lot of kind of dysfunction there, and I was single back in the day, and trying to kind of figure it out. But Samantha, I think, is kind of the every woman. She is sort of an amalgamation of all the sort of friends and women in my life, and kind of struggles that we were having in our 20s, and trying to overcome them, and realizing, after the fact, in hindsight, there's a lot of, there, you can laugh about it. And you can also realize, at that time, you're doing the best that you can do in those situations. And a lot of times your best is definitely not at all good enough. And that was the case with Samantha. And in the book, there's very heightened situations that go over the top for comedic purposes.
And when women get together, they like to be relaxed, and it seems that wine always seems to be in the forefront, and there is so much of it. There are so many different varieties of it that you try to incorporate that not in your real life, but also in your book.
Yes. And I think wine is kind of an interesting thing. For one, Samantha in the book, she does a lot of tipping of the glass, and those around her do also. And I tell people it's a book enjoyed, with a glass of wine. But I think the wine is symbolic too, because there are, as there are many different kind of men in the world, there are many different wines in the world, and all of them are, do you go for bold, bold in your face wine or men, or do you like someone that's soft and subtle and surprises you, and all of these metaphors in wine, I think, actually relate very well to dating because of that very reason of that, and what is good for one person is maybe not good for someone else, and everybody kind of takes away a different impression, whether it's a man or a wine.
And I've never heard of ice wine before.
Yeah, ice wine is, and I always kind of, I recommend people try things that they've maybe never tried before, especially around the holiday season, because, why not have a little fun and be a little adventurous? And so ice wine is one of the things I say for people to try, just because I think people have heard of dessert wine, which is a really, super sweet wine that's meant to be sipped, and it's great with desserts and after dinner and that sort of thing. And ice wine is kind of an alternative to that. It's also on the sweeter side, but it's a very unique wine. It's basically, made from frozen grapes, and it's made in places where there's kind of extreme cold bouts and whatnot. But it's just a very unique wine, and it can definitely be paired with desserts. It's a great accompaniment to things like pound cake or cheesecake or coconut ice cream, things like that. But it's also really good. It also goes well with food. So sometimes if people are looking for kind of a wine that will go many different ways, an ice wine is, again, kind of an adventurous way to get there. It goes great with like Thai food or, different things like that.
And when you were writing the book and you were creating the situations that Samantha would find herself in, did you find yourself laughing because you could see it coming?
Yeah. I think some of the things, yes. I've had people tell me, and different people have mentioned it in reviews, that it's kind of like you're watching it and your hands are over your eyes, but you're peeking because you have to see what's happening. But you're like, oh my God, what is happening? And so I think, yes, the reader is in some cases seeing what is happening. Other cases, I think not. But in the cases where the reader is in on the secret, and Samantha is not, you're kind of shouting out to her, like, what are you doing? Why, don't you see what's about to happen? And unfortunately, she doesn't, because she definitely, pink is her favorite color, and she looks at the rosy side of the fence, and so she doesn't often see it coming because she wants to believe better.
And that's always really, really difficult, because the other characters in the book, they try to guide her and give her some assurance that sometimes she has to take off those rose-colored glasses and see things the way they actually are.
Right. And I think she's definitely in a struggle, and others around her can see that, is that she has sort of the barking voice, and I feel like, I can at least relate to that sort of that kind of needling in your ear of like your alter ego, sort of. You're thinking one thing, and in Samantha's case, that needling voice is a negative one. So she might be thinking, okay, I'm going to kind of kick kick butt in this meeting or do whatever in the inner voice, which is, kind of a combination of her parents and that sort of devout upbringing that's always, kind of thwarting views on you that maybe are not your own. And so kind of at every turn, she's got this sort of devil on her shoulder, not giving her positive self-talk, giving her, you suck, why are you doing this kind of thing. And so she sort of takes that on. And it definitely shapes what she does and the choices that she makes, and not necessarily always in the best possible way.
How fun was it for you creating the male characters?
Oh yeah, well that was a blast, because I think I like to say it was a lot of men behaving badly, and I think that's always fun to write. It's less fun to write characters that are perfect people, because people are not perfect. Even the best man in the world, my husband, is not a perfect person. And so I think it's fun to write those imperfections. I love writing flawed characters in general. And these men that Samantha selects along the way, she thinks that they are perfect and they're going to be the answer to her problems. And they're not. And it's kind of fun to, I think some of those male characters were again sort of bits and pieces of men that I've met along the way, that my friends met along the way. We would, when the book, kind of how the book came about is that, when I was I spent time living in kind of the big, what I call the kind of the best and the worst dating capitals of the world in New York City and Los Angeles. And depending on how you look at it, for men, a lot of times these are great places because there is just like a cornucopia of women just wanting to be courted and loved and all of that. And a lot of times there's more men than women, and that just creates an interesting dynamic. But the male characters were great fun because, again, they had some issues. And there were cases where she met some really good men along the way, and she tossed them aside because, she felt like she wasn't kind of worthy for that kind of good person to love her.
But she isn't a total girly girl, though.
No, she has she's got a lot of chutzpah, I think, and part of that is, the father figure in the book was very kind of hard on her and strict and just really informing her in very kind of caustic ways. And so I think that made her stronger, and for the good and bad. It made her endure things that maybe she shouldn't endure, but at the same time, it also gave her lots of spunk, I'd like to think.
When a woman is going to sit down to read your novel or this type of a novel, to go back to the different wines, what would be the ideal situation and what would be the ideal wine for the woman to have while she's reading?
For one, I would say the book, when people have asked me, like, what kind of wine would you pair with the book? And I would say a Zinfandel, and not like a pink Zinfandel, white Zinfandel, but a Zinfandel that's a red varietal. And the reason I say that is because a Zinfandel, for one, it's a surprise. It's very unique. People, if you're familiar with Zinfandel, you might be nodding your head saying, yes. Zinfandel is very eclectic. The taste is often very surprising. It's spicy yet smooth. I think sometimes Zinfandel, it will surprise you from Zinfandel to Zinfandel, and as it's trying to kind of figure itself out what it wants to be. Some Zinfandels are really rich and deep. Others are more fruity and a little bit lighter. And so I think the book is like that. It's kind of a roller coaster of emotions, and you're never quite knowing what you're going to get. And I think a Zinfandel is a great wine to drink as you're reading the book. And I also think Samantha, at a certain point in her life, is just grabbing at anything she can get. And whether that's alcohol or men, she's just kind of grabbing and going for it. And I do say not in a binge wine drinking kind of way, because wine you really can't, or maybe shouldn't binge drink wine. But I think there's fun in trying different wines and experimenting with different wines that you haven't tasted before, because what you may like, Larry, and what I may like are very different things, and I could be drinking, a $5 bottle of wine that I think is great, and you might think it's horrible, and that's part of it. It's a personal preference. So I think with the book, having multiple drinks and wines is a good idea.
I think I like your sense of humor, and the way it looks to me, based on just the book, is that you have an observational way of finding something funny in things that you're maybe finding absurd or not quite true. And so I would imagine if we were sitting with you in a restaurant, for example, that you might make an observation about somebody else in the restaurant, and we would just all crack up about it. I was curious, in a dating situation, if Samantha is as educated as you are regarding wine, would she ever date a guy who was faking that knowledge? I would be one of those guys, by the way. I'd be the guy faking that I knew something about wine. So does that happen at all?
In the book or in life?
Either or. Does it happen to you? Yeah, maybe it was with you.
In real life.
Yeah. I would say definitely there are a lot of men faking out there as far as when it comes to wine or wine knowledge, which can be really endearing, like when someone is just like, they want to try to, you can definitely, I think, impress a woman with, prowess in the way that you order wine and cook and all that sort of thing, because we love that idea that a man that kind of knows what he wants and he's, taking a chance that you're going to like the same thing. So I think that can be a really great kind of aphrodisiac. On the flip side, when someone is like a little too cocky and a little too full of themselves, and then you realize they don't really know what they're talking about, and you don't know what you're talking about, and then you're just like, okay, he's just a poser. So
yeah.
Now it's done.
So he's mansplaining something that you could teach him about. I think that happens to us a lot in life. People will try to explain things that we already could be the professor on.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think it's fun. If there's an earnestness about it and someone is really giving it a college try, then I think that's great and amazing. But if someone's like doing it to sort of lord over you, then not so much so.
And there are a few situations in there where arrogance seems to come to the surface, but you take care of that right away with finesse and elegance.
Yeah, thank you. I think that there many of the men that Samantha meets along the way are, she's attracted to the bad boy type, which I can speak for myself and many girlfriends of mine. For whatever reason, everyone seems to have a phase where you gravitate towards the bad boy guy who is so cocky and arrogant. You just wonder, how does he pull it off? And you meet, there's a character in the book, his nickname is Superstar for a reason, and not necessarily because all those around him think that he's brilliant, which he happens to be, but he thinks he is brilliant also, and likes to he has an air about himself, and that's he is a superstar, and I think that there's something about that arrogance and confidence that on the one hand it may kind of infuriate you of, oh wow, how can this person be so brazen, and on the other hand it's also to be a very attractive
the way I look at it, when I'm with somebody like that, I would rather be with somebody like that than with somebody who's always down on everything and sad about everything and wanting you to cry with him. I would rather be with somebody fun and arrogant than somebody who's and that doesn't even have to do with dating. That's just hanging out with somebody,
No, it's true. And I think there, on the flip side of that, there's a reason why as women sometimes we gravitate to that kind of person, because a lot of times they can be the life of the party, and they're just like, they're fun and sort of it's contagious. And I think in some ways, like Samantha in the book, she's always hoping and striving to be her best self, and I think in some ways she thinks that if she's hanging with Superstar, that some of that brilliance is going to rub off on her, and the way that he can kind of command the crowd and everyone's attention, she's hoping to kind of glean something from that. And I think a lot of times, when I meet someone that I just think, wow, they're really, they're what can I learn from this? I think there's something I can learn from this.
Is this a debut for you? Is this your first novel?
It is. This is my fiction debut, which has been very exciting.
And so, as a journalist, is this something that you've been dying to do for a very long time?
Well, it's interesting because I didn't set out to write a book initially. I just, at the time when this sort of the kernel of the book began, I was living in Los Angeles, and I had lived in New York before that, and I was single at the time. And in Los Angeles in particular, I mean, some crazy, just you wouldn't believe sorts of things go down. And, there's the actor factor is out there.
Yeah.
And there's like crazy happenings. And so at a certain point, I realized, like, I need to write this down, like, because things would happen to me or my friends or whatever, or people would be telling stories over wine. And I just was like, I got to write this down. This is, like, too crazy or funny or unbelievable or inappropriate to believe. And so I just started writing it down. And with no intent for anything. Well, then the more as it kind of got going, I sort of thought, I might be onto something here. And then I as you mentioned, I think, I grew up in sort of a strict religious environment, and in that, I started to see, as I got older and kind of distanced from that, I started to see the humor in that upbringing and how, kind of contradictory it can be, and the message it sends, it is very and not. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that sense of humor will resonate because I think a lot of people sort of go through that. They say, yeah, this was my life, and oh gosh, it was her life too, and this is funny. So I think you've hit a home run with this one. It looks like you have. I'm looking at your the Amazon page. It looks like you're getting really good reviews. I have the cover of the book on the podcast. So if you're looking at the podcast, that's what the book looks like, and I have a copy of it here. If you call me right now, I'll leave it for you on Patsy's desk. You can come pick it up today. It'll be a nice Christmas weekend read for you.
It's a wonderful read. Very entertaining.
Thank you.
So I found it on Amazon. Do you have another website you want to direct us to?
Sure. If you go to my own personal website, it's ChristinaJulian.com, and that's CHRISTINA, Julian, JULIAN.com, and it has everything about the book. It also has ways to get to my nonfiction, my wine writing work, and other writing that I do. I have events coming up all over the place, and it talks about where the events are and where you can buy the book. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, pretty much anywhere you can buy books. It's available.
Very, very fun. Thank you for taking time to be with us this morning, Christina. Have a great Christmas weekend and a Happy New Year.
Thank you so much, you guys, and same to you.
Thank you, Christina. We'll be right back.